it's me, T. I'm back again for another video, and today's video is a topic I've been kind of wanting to talk about for a while, but it's my birthday week. Figured I'd do something fun. Well, fun. Everyone may not think it's fun. I think it's fun. We all know. I mean, if you're a book lover, you know books are costly. And you don't think so at first because you're like, oh, this is like $13, add to cart, add to cart, add to cart. And then you have spent like over $100 and you have 9 books coming in. You're like, oh, I went a little too hard. It's a very easy cycle to fall into, especially when it comes to online shopping, I feel like. Because you're like, oh, one more won't hurt. Like, while I'm here, oh, it says this as well. Like, they suggest this since I wanted to read that. Oh, there's a second book to that. Let me add that in. I was at a point where I ended up buying a lot of books, and not necessarily because I needed them, and I never really read them. They just kind of sat on my shelf and collected dust. I think another part of what makes us more prone to that is consuming book content. You see these wide, expansive bookshelves in people's homes, and you're like, gosh, I wish I had that many books. That looks so just majestic, and like, I want to be that. And so we tend to buy more books that we may not actually want to buy in hopes of getting that aesthetic, that look. And then throughout my adult life, which hasn't been very long, I will admit, I've hit multiple rough patches financially. I think when I was a kid, I was in the mindset of any book I want to read, I have to have in my hands, like physical copy. So when I became an adult, I bought a lot of the books that I wanted to read. So it was this cycle of, I want to read this, but I don't have the money to buy it. I had to adjust to using, more cost-effective ways. Through deeper reflection and deeper thought, I've realized, how I can use those cost-effective ways to be more consumer conscious with my book buying. I'll start by talking about how I save money on books, and then kind of conscious consumerism, what that is, how it applies to books and all that, and then kind of how they work together. And then hopefully you guys can take some of those tips and we can all become a little more conscious of what we're buying and reading. I have a library card. I feel like that's the first thing you should do if you're trying to save money, is get a library card. Usually you do have to leave the house to actually get the library card, but after that, if you have trouble kind of getting out of the house, whether that be mental or physical obstacles keeping you there, there's apps like Libby and Hoopla. I think Hoopla is more focused on like audiobooks and TVs, movies, that kind of stuff. Libby has audiobooks and ebooks, and I think it also has magazines. But you can use your library card and input that information to get access to an online catalog, which is really nice. Now, of course, with libraries, the downside is you have to wait. Well, wait for some things. Some things will be available on demand, but if you want a really popular book, you're probably going to have to wait a little bit for it. So there's that trade-off. Utilize your libraries more. They are so resourceful and so helpful. The next few points are going to be kind of tied together. So the next way is I go to used bookstores. There's a few in my area. There's a few chain ones like Half Price Books that you can go to. I also have a local one that's kind of smaller that I like to go to and support them. So if you're needing something a bit more convenient, there are also websites like Half Price Books has their own, and there's Thrift Books, and those sell used books that you can order online and have shipped to you. So there's also a convenience factor to that you can utilize if you need it. Another way I save money, kind of along the same idea as the used bookstores, is through thrift stores. So these books obviously have been donated. I usually don't have good luck with thrift store books. They don't like me too much. But if you're someone who tends to have good luck at thrift stores, you can look at their book selection, or if you just happen to be in one, look at their book selection, you know, see what they have. You may be able to find something really good for really cheap. Kind of what sparked me wanting to do this more was my last video, which leads to my next point, which is little free libraries are another really good way to get books. Not only do you get books for free, you can also swap out a book that you may not like as much or that you're kind of wanting to get rid of, and you can keep a cycle going of reusing old books rather than buying a new one. Since my last video, I've done more research and I've seen more little libraries in my area. One of my commenters had said there are some that are specifically child themed or some that just have specific themes. So I looked around and there are some in my area that are more adult focused, it looks like. So I will definitely look into those ones in the future. Now that it's getting a bit colder, I may hold off until it gets a little warmer though. But yes, definitely utilize those, because I think they're really awesome for your community that you live in, you know, this community project type thing. It's good for the environment and you get free books out of it, and you can find something really new and interesting that you may not have originally wanted to grab or would have grabbed had you been in, you know, a Barnes & Noble or on Amazon or something like that. And then another way I save money on books is through Kindle Unlimited. You pay this monthly subscription, I think it's like $9.99 or something like that. And then you have access to a wide array of specific ebooks. Now, the ebooks that you read on there do support the author, although very small. It looks like it supports the author by like half a cent per page read, which isn't all that much, if we're being real. But, you know, if they have a more popular book or a book that you can promote to your friends that also have Kindle Unlimited, or I read a book that I can promote to you guys, it can support that author more. A lot of smaller authors, if they want to independently publish, Kindle/Amazon kind of has this self-publishing that it helps you with, and it can put books on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. And it's a really good way to find those newer small authors that, you know, that's their best way to get their foot in the door. And then another thing you can do is dive into the public domain. So after a book is published, the copyright holds for 95 years. So any book 1927 or older is open to the public domain, and usually you can find them fairly easily online. Good example of this would be like Shakespeare. You could pull up Romeo and Juliet. I tried it and I found it like within a few seconds. Fairly easy to find. Again, this is for older books, but it can be really useful if you're all like, I kind of want to get into this older author, but I'm not quite sure. I want to be able to test the waters a bit before I go all the way in. And then you can kind of decide from there if that's something you want to really jump into. Another thing that I've done that's really saved a lot of money is gifts/borrowing from a friend's library. So sometimes my friend will accidentally get like 2 books and I'll get the other one, which easy, free book, you know. Or I will have a book that I'm interested in, but I'll hold off on buying it because I know my friend has it and my friend will let me borrow it, and then I get to read it and return it to her. Kind of like a library, a little book swap thing going on. And I have all of my books available to my friends to borrow if they want to. And then another thing I've noticed when buying books is that ebooks tend to be a lot cheaper than the hard copies of books. So sometimes, like this month for the book club book, I was kind of tight on money at the time, but it was a newer release and it had a long wait in the library, and I really wanted to read it, and I was being a little impatient, so I bought the ebook version of it because it was the cheaper copy of it, and I was able to read it. Those are pretty much the 8 ways that I've been saving money on books. So conscious consumerism is basically putting more thought into what you're buying before you buy it. So you're thinking about, where does it come from? Who's making it? How is it made? After I'm done with it, what do I do with it? What kind of effect would it have on the environment? Cause and effect, things like that. Thinking about that before buying. And the book community, it has a few different ways this can take form. So you can think about, where am I buying this book? Is this a corporation? Is this locally owned? Is this a business that's kind of monopolizing the industry? Is it a chain bookstore? Is this a place I want to buy from to begin with? And then number 2, obviously books are made of paper, and paper comes from trees. So then there's that aspect of how much am I contributing to deforestation by buying all these books that I may not even read? And then there's also who's putting this book out there. Usually I feel like this applies to the author, thinking about who's making this, and is that something I want to give my money to? Because when you buy that, it's going to the author, it's going to the publishing company, it's going to a wide array of people. And so just thinking about, is that something that I want to support with my dollars? The top 2 issues for me with conscious consumerism are where I'm buying the book from, and the effect on trees, the amount of paper we're using. So how do I cut back on my consumerism, and how do I figure out what I want to keep and what is worth the price and what I can live without? How I tackle this is pretty much everything in our economy is based on supply and demand. When you think about it, when a book's first released, they're going to make X amount of copies based on, the popularity of the author, the advertisement around it, how much hype it's getting, and they're going to make X amount. They don't want to make more than they need because that's not going to be cost effective for them. They want to make a suitable amount. So the amount of books being printed and bound is going to be based on supply and demand. How I tackle this is I like to try and get that reading material into my eyeballs in a form where I don't have to buy a new copy of the book first and then decide, that book was amazing. I want to keep this book. Basically, the ideology behind this being, if multiple people do this, then this will cut down on some of that demand, because not everyone is going to love that book and be all like, yes, I loved it so much, I need to have it for myself. So we'll cut back on some of that demand, therefore cutting back on some of the printing and binding being done. Well, when you use, say, a library card, or you borrow from one of your friends' collections, it is one copy, or in a library's case, maybe a few copies of a specific book being passed along a group of people, instead of that group of people going out and all buying their own individual copy. A person reads this book, say Dear Edward, reads the book, and they're all like, I'm not a fan of this, I'm gonna return it, good luck to the next person. I get Dear Edward next week. I read it. I absolutely loved it. So I asked for it. I asked for it for Christmas. I said I really want this book and I'd love to have it as part of my library. By doing this, this cuts back on the number of people who are going out and buying new copies, and it zones down the people that buy those new copies to people that truly like the book and want to support the author and have the book on hand. Another way this ties in is with used books. So we all know the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. When dealing with used books, usually they're donated, whether that be to a thrift store, a used bookstore, or someone swaps it out at a little free library. When this is done, we are reusing the same copy of a book rather than buying a new copy. This book has already been made, it's already been printed and put out into the world. So instead of letting it go to waste by throwing it away, we can donate that book. We can then go to a bookstore and we may see a used book and be like, that looks good, I'm gonna buy that, read that book, and then if we like it, we can keep it. And if not, the cycle can continue on where it's donated yet again. Now with Kindle Unlimited, I have a lot of conflicting feelings with Amazon and using that platform, just because it has gotten so big and it has made it very difficult for, you know, some smaller mom and pop bookshops or local bookstores to stay afloat, just because people like to pay for convenience, and typically those big corporations have the budget and bandwidth to provide that convenience. So I'm always very conflicted when it comes to it. But when it comes to Kindle Unlimited, like I said, a lot of smaller authors, this is, you know, their best way to get their foot in the door when it comes to publishing and getting their work out. I kind of looked into the Kindle publishing at one point. You can choose to have it in ebook, you can choose to have hard copies, published copies. You just put in the information for your book, you make a cover. It's all kind of simplified for you. It kind of helps you rather than, you know, trying to figure it out all on your own. And I believe you also are able to publish things for free, which is another big help to especially smaller authors who probably don't have that huge of a budget to get their works up and going. But it's really nice and it's really efficient and it's really accessible for smaller authors. And for that reason, I'm able to kind of reconcile giving, you know, that about $10 a month, and it pays for it on its own with the number of books that I'm getting. And then from there, like that time I got Drunk and Saved a Demon, I love that book. I'm going to probably buy that book in a physical copy because I really liked it. So I was able to support that author in some small amount by reading the book to begin with, and then I'm able to support them more because I enjoyed the book by buying a physical copy of that book, which I believe they get a bigger percentage of. And usually those books that are published through Amazon and Kindle are mostly limited to Amazon and Kindle. So it puts you in a tough spot, but I think Kindle Unlimited at least is definitely worth it, and it's definitely worth the trade-off in that sense. Now, accessing the public domain, this kind of goes along the same lines as like a library book. You have an easily accessible copy of said book or story or poem you want to read. You can read that, get a feel for it, and then decide, you know, is this something I really want? What did I say? 1927 and under? A lot of those old works, a lot of publishing companies will come up with these, you know, pretty aesthetic additions to catch our eye. You know, I fall victim to it. We all fall victim to it. We love a pretty book cover. Let's not kid ourselves. We love that shit. Love it. So if you're able to access the public domain, you're able to read it first. And then you're like, you know what? I really like that. Let me go find a nice edition, or I'll go to my local bookstore, see what they have there, and you can pick it out from there. And then with ebooks, like I said, they're usually cheaper than hard copy books. If you're not really wanting to wait for the library hold, or, you know, you just gotta have it now kind of thing, and you have a little bit of money, usually you can buy an ebook for cheaper and then read it. Again, it's getting that reading material into your eyeballs, into your mind before buying it, so you can decide if that's something you truly want. Therefore, saving paper, saving trees. And once you read the ebook, you may be able to even start, looking for it in used bookstores or a local bookstore. It just gives you that experience first, so you can ensure, yes, this is what I want. And that's kind of the main catch to all of them, is I'm interested in this book, let me read it first and let me see. Now, there are a few times when I splurge, and I don't think we should be made to feel guilty about that. Like I said, there are a lot of books that are made in X amount based on supply and demand. So most of those books are already made. You're not buying a book and it being specifically made just for your order. It's not made to order. Even though that is the case, I believe we should cut down on our purchasing of paper copy, hard copy of books due to the environmental aspect of it, favoring more platforms such as ebooks, audiobooks, which I personally cannot do. If you notice, I didn't talk about them really at all. That's because I don't have much of an experience with audiobooks, because I just can't. I lose where I'm at, and then it's a nightmare. I just can't do audiobooks. But we should definitely lean more towards those platforms. But having hard copy books, having that physical thing, it makes it, I can loan it out to friends, I can pull it up, I can make notes in it, I can mark quotes in it. It's just such an easily accessible, and we've had them for so long. It's a tradition I don't see going out of style, but I do think it should be turned more into something from a collection standpoint of, I really like this book, I want to keep this book for my own collection because this book means something to me, to help cut back on our consumerism and paper use and all that, as I've talked about. It's human. We splurge sometimes. It's usually because I've heard nothing but great things about the book from people with similar taste to me. So in that case, if I see a book like that in like a used bookstore, something along those lines, I will be like, you know what, I'm just gonna get it. I've heard so many good things about it, I'm just gonna get it because I trust what I've heard. Other times being if I'm being impatient or impulsive, so if I'm not really wanting to wait on a hold, or I see something and I just have to have it now, which we all have those impulses. Sometimes I can fight them, sometimes I can't, and I end up with another book. Or if it is a series or a book that really means so much to me, like Mortal Instruments or Infernal Devices. I grew up with those books. Those have a special nostalgia factor to me. So I will buy, collector's editions when they come out here and there, and have multiple copies of one book, but they're more collector based because I love those books and they meant a lot to me. But yeah, those are my kind of tips and tricks, and just kind of that conversation about, saving money and also helping the planet at the same time, and supporting, a good cause. Like I said, voting with your dollars. I don't think collecting books is unethical as a whole. I think there is an ethical way to do it. We just need to be more mindful about it. That being said, if you like this video, make sure you give it a like. Don't usually make this kind of content, so if you want more of it, let me know with that thumbs up. If you want to see more of my content, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell, because who knows when I'll post. I don't even know when this is going up because it's birthday week. And leave a comment down below on your thoughts, what you do to save money on books. I really want to have like a conversation about it. Like, let's talk about it. As always, guys, go support your local bookstore if you are able, and I will see you guys in the next one.